Hello and welcome to another video guide from GrandStream Networks. In this video, we will go over the captive portal feature available on the GrandStream GWN 7600 access points and demonstrate the configuration process. As you might know, a captive portal is a landing page that gets displayed when a user tries to connect to a wireless network. The user is usually prompted to view and interact with the landing page by providing authentication before access to Wi-Fi is granted. In some scenarios, captive portal can include a disclaimer page to require users to accept it to get Wi-Fi access. Typically, captive portal is implemented in places and venues that offer free Wi-Fi, such as in airports, hotels, coffee shops, and retailers. All GrandStream GWN 7600 series includes built-in captive portal functionality and tools that allow you to customize the splash page and redirection to a specific website for promotion and advertising purposes. And the captive portal can be configured using the web interface of the GWN access point or through GWN.cloud, which is the GrandStream cloud platform for managing and monitoring GWN access points. So in addition to the option of implementing captive portal on open Wi-Fi, there is the option to restrict Wi-Fi access with authentication, and there are 4 methods for captive portal authentication that are supported on the GWN access points. First, there's authentication through social media login, which uses the API to allow login authentication between GWN access points and the social media platform servers. The 2 social media platforms currently supported are Facebook and Twitter. The second option is the use of vouchers, which allows clients to have internet access for limited duration using a code that is randomly generated by the GWN access point. Third, authentication through a radius server provides centralized authentication and accounting management for users who try to connect to the wireless network, and this is generally implemented in enterprise wireless networks. The fourth method of authentication is the simple use of Wi-Fi passwords. Now let's look at how to set up captive portal with Facebook login authentication. And there are 3 main steps involved in the configuration process of captive portal with Facebook login authentication. First, you need to log into your Facebook developer account and create an app, as I will show you in a moment. Then you set up a captive portal policy to use Facebook login authentication and include the Facebook app ID and secret. And finally, you create an SSID and assign the captive portal policy to it. So once this is all set up correctly, users will be prompted with a captive portal page to enter their Facebook login credentials when they try to log into your wireless network. And in this scenario, GWN access point will use the Facebook API to validate the entered credentials. So now let's log into the web interface of the GWN to demonstrate how to configure a captive portal with Facebook authentication. All right, let's go ahead and log in to the web interface of GWN using the login credentials. The captive portal feature can be configured using the web interface of GWN access point, as I mentioned, and the configuration is available under captive portal. So to configure captive portal, you go to policy and then you create captive portal policy. So let's give this one a name. We can call it, for example, Facebook authentication. And then the splash page, we're just going to use the internal one. And then the authentication type, I'm going to use social login authentication for Facebook. And client expiration specifies the amount of time that the user can have access to Wi-Fi after the authenticate using the Facebook login authentication. So in this case, we're going to put, for example, 360. You can choose the seconds or hours. So in case you want to use hours, for example, you can enter 2 hours. Then we're going to use Facebook. Once you select Facebook, GWN is going to ask you to enter the Facebook app ID and the Facebook app secret. So I'm going to stop here, then I'm going to go to Facebook developer account. I'm going to sign into my account. I believe I'm already signed in. So when you log into your Facebook for developer account, you go to my apps. Okay, then you create an app. As you can see, I already have 2 created, so I'm going to show you how to create another one. So when you click on create app, you're going to choose the option business. Okay, then click on continue. Then it's going to ask you app display. Just give it any name. We can call it, for example, GWN captive portal. And then it's going to ask you app purpose is for clients. It's going to ask you again, do you have a business manager account? Just say no business manager account selected. Then create the app. It's going to ask you again to authenticate. So I'm going to enter the password for my Facebook account developer, then submit. So once you click on submit, it provides you with multiple apps that you can use. The one that we are interested in is the Facebook login. Okay, so we're going to click on setup. Then it's going to bring us here. We're going to go to settings. So once you are in this page, all the other ones, you can leave them as the default one. Then set this one to yes. And in the valid authentication redirect URI, you can include this link. Okay, then we're going to save and apply the changes. And you're going to notice this when you try to save and apply, it's going to generate an error here that says your app has a standard access to public profile. So to correct this option, you just click on get advanced access. Okay, and then we go to public profile, and then we click on get advanced access, then agree to the terms. Then again, you enter your Facebook login password, submit. So now that we have set that up, then we can go back to Facebook login again and the settings and save and apply the changes. Okay, and this is the one that we just created. So I'm going to select this one. Public profile, I certified, continue. Then acknowledge that one as well and submit. So we're going to close that. Then we're going to go back here to our app. Okay, so to get the Apple ID and the secret, so we're going to go to settings and the basic. So this is the app ID. So I'm going to copy this one and paste it right here. Then I still need the Facebook app secret. I'm going to get that one from the same page. So I'm just going to click on show, then copy this option here. Then I'll paste it right here. So for the default portal page, as I told you earlier, you can customize it. You can customize your own splash page, but I'm just going to use the ones that are built into the GWN. Okay, so I'm going to check this box, and redirection, I can choose that one. For example, I can use the GrandStream website. .com. There's also this option right here. It says enable daily limit. So when you check this option and you set, for example, this one to 2 hours, they can only connect 2 hours a day. That means they can't, even if they try to re-authenticate again, the GWN would not allow them. If you would like clients to keep connecting as many times as they want, then just make sure you uncheck this box. Since here we are using HTTP, so I'm going to leave that one unchecked as well. And if you go here under authentication rule, it gives us pre-authentication and post-authentication. In other words, these are the websites or the domain names that the users can access before authentication and the post authentication rules are the ones that the users can access after they authenticate with the GWN access points. I'm going to select the GrandStream website. Okay. Let me just enter grandstream.com. So that users, even if they are not authenticated with their Facebook, they can still access the grandstream.com website. So I'm just going to leave all. And for the post authentication, it doesn't matter. We just want them to access all the websites after they get authenticated. So I'm going to save and apply those changes. So once the changes are successfully applied, we're going to go to SSID. Then we need to create a new SSID. So I'm going to call that one, for example, guests. I'm not going to use any VLAN. Then to enable captive portal, you need to check this option here. So I'm going to choose the captive portal that I just created, which is Facebook authentication. In case you need to add a schedule to that one, you can check this box and then you can specify the schedule. The schedule is something that you configure right here under system settings. So after you configure this, the schedule, you will find this option available here under schedule, so you can select which one you need to apply to this captive portal. But for this example, I'm not going to use the schedule. So in case you want to make the Wi-Fi open after they authenticate with their Facebook login, just make sure you set that one to open. If you select, for example, WPA, that means users, they need to authenticate with their Facebook account. Then they need to have the password for the Wi-Fi. So I'm just going to leave that one to open. Then there are multiple choices here in case you want to use them with captive portal. Different settings apply to different case scenarios. For example, client isolation. So in case you want the users to access the internet and only the internet, in other words, you don't want them to access the printers and other devices in your network, you can set this option to the internet. Then here, in case you have multiple access points, you can choose which ones to use this captive portal. So I only have one access point, so I'm going to select this one right here, then apply the changes. So after the changes have been applied, the captive portal has been created and also assigned to the SSID. Let's go ahead and try to connect to that SSID from this computer. Okay, so now I just tried to connect. So when you try to connect, it's gonna prompt you with this disclaimer. So I'm gonna accept, then connect with Facebook. So I'm just gonna give it a second. Yes, so I'm gonna continue as the username. So because this computer already has my Facebook login credentials saved. So if that's the case, you're gonna log in automatically, and as you can see now, I can navigate. If we go, for example, to google.com, you will see now that it's working and it is using the captive portal that we just created. You can always go to the GrandStream website to review the documentation that explains step by step how to configure a captive portal with Facebook login credentials. There's also the documentation in case you want to use Twitter instead of Facebook. Next, let's go ahead and look at the next authentication method, which is vouchers. So the voucher feature available on the GWN access points allows clients to have access to Wi-Fi for limited duration using a code that is randomly generated by the GWN access point. For instance, a coffee shop or a restaurant could offer Wi-Fi access using voucher codes that can be delivered for each transaction. And the voucher codes are set up with a predefined duration. So once the voucher expires, the client can no longer have access to Wi-Fi. And when creating vouchers, you can specify how many devices can connect to Wi-Fi using the same voucher code. You can allow up to 5 devices to connect to Wi-Fi using a single voucher code, and the expiration duration of the voucher will start counting after the first successful connection. The voucher feature also allows users or administrators of the GWN access points to create up to 1,000 codes at a time. And you can print them directly from the GWN web interface, as I will show you in a moment. And another interesting feature is that the admin can set data bandwidth limitation on each created voucher. So let's go ahead and log into the web interface of GWN and create captive portal with vouchers. So as we did earlier with Facebook authentication, we need to go back here to policy list, then create another captive portal policy. And this one, for example, we can call it vouchers, and the splash page, we're just going to use the internal one. As I mentioned earlier, you can use external splash pages. You just need to have the link, and it requires also the use of a radius server. So there are some parameters here that you need to configure to use the external splash page. So for this demonstration, I'm just going to use the internal. Then the authentication type, we're going to use vouchers this time. And I'm going to use the default portal page. So this is the default one. Again, you can always customize these portal pages using the HTML code. And the GWN already provides you with some built-in HTML portal pages that you can use. So I'm just going to use the ones that are built into the GWN. For the landing page, as I mentioned earlier, you can always customize it. So this time, let's go ahead and use the Facebook website instead. There's also this option here, enable daily limit. So once you check this option, the guests can only authenticate once using their voucher. And this option works together with another option that you need to enable when you create the vouchers, because when you create the vouchers, you also specify the expiration timeout for the voucher. So I'm not going to use this one. There's also this option of fail safe. This one is used in case you are using vouchers with a radius server. So I'm not going to be using this option for this demonstration. So let's go ahead to authentication rule. As I explained in the previous example with Facebook authentication, in the pre-authentication, you can include the websites that the users can access even if they don't have a code. And post-authentication, you restrict the websites that the users can access after they authenticate. So I'm not going to configure these for now. So I'm just going to leave them as a default, save. I'm going to go ahead and create vouchers, add. So let's start with the number 1000. Maximum devices specifies how many devices can use the same voucher. So let's say we're going to use 3. The byte limit, so I'm not going to configure the amount of data. The duration specifies the time after which the voucher will expire, and the clients will be disconnected from the internet after the expiration time. So for example, if I enter 3 hours, so once the user connects to the Wi-Fi using the voucher, after 3 hours, the GWN will disconnect that user. And for example, in a hotel, if someone is staying in a hotel for 2 days, you can actually include the validity time of 2 days. Download limit, you can, for example, specify 1 megabits, and for the upload, 1 megabits. Save and apply the changes. So once you create the vouchers, you can actually print them all, or you can select one and print that one. So once you click on print, it's going to print it in this format right here. So I'm just going to cancel that one. Okay. In case you have some vouchers that you would like to delete, you can also delete those. You can also create multiple vouchers for multiple customers. So for example, these vouchers, we specify that they can only have 1 megabits upload and 1 megabits per second download. I can add another set of vouchers with different upload and download values. The same thing as we did with the Facebook authentication. So we need to go to SSID and create an SSID. So let's call this one vouchers. Then we're going to check captive portal. Then we're going to choose the vouchers captive portal that we selected. And we can set that one to open. Device membership, we're going to select the access point, save, and apply the changes. Okay, so now we have the SSID created. So let's go ahead and log into this SSID to demonstrate how that works. So I'm going to use this voucher code that I printed earlier. So let's look for the SSID, connect. All right, so once you connect using the SSID vouchers, it's going to prompt us to enter the code. So I'm going to try to paste that code here, accept, then connect to Wi-Fi. So as you can see here, after the connection is successful, it's the GWN will redirect us to the Facebook page that we configured as a redirection URL. Next, let's look at the radius authentication method available on the GWN access point. So the option illustrated in the example in front of us is the use of radius, which of course requires having a fully set up and working radius server. Radius service, as some of you might know, provides authorization, authentication, and accounting. And usually it is used in enterprise networks and is considered as an efficient way to authenticate users because each Wi-Fi user must have a unique ID and password to connect to the wireless network. So let's go back to the web interface of GWN and show you how to configure radius authentication on the GWN. So to configure radius authentication on the GWN access point, so we're going to pretty much repeat the same process again. So we're going to go to captive portal, policy list, then we're going to create a new policy. We can call this one radius for now. Then I'm going to use the internal splash page, the authentication method. This is where we specify the radius server. We talked about this earlier, so I'm going to enter 2 hours here. Then we include the IP address of the radius server. Then here we use the local port of the radius server. By default, it's 1812, but most of the time you end up changing the local port of the radius server. So make sure you match whatever port you have on the radius server. And this is where you include the secret or the password that you have configured on the radius server. And then you specify which radius authentication method is implemented on the radius server. If there is a mismatch between the method used here and the method used by the server, radius will not work. So you must make sure that you use the correct authentication method. So I'm just going to use the built-in captive portal for radius authentication. Then again, you can use an external link or just redirect users to their original URL. The same thing here, we talked about the authentication rule. So let's go ahead, save, and apply the changes. Okay, so now that we created the captive portal policy, so we're going to go to SSID and create an SSID so we can assign it that captive portal. So we can call it radius for now. And then we go to captive portal, and then we choose the radius captive portal. Then for security, we're going to select open. And by the way, in case you don't want to use the captive portal and you just want to use radius, there's also this option right here, which is 802.1x. So for this webinar, I'm just going to stick with the captive portal, and then I'm going to set it to open. So I'm just going to leave everything as a default. Then I go back here to membership and then select the access point, save, and apply the changes. So now that the SSID has been created, so let's go ahead and try to log into this SSID so we can see the captive portal page. connect. Alright, so here, as I mentioned earlier, one of the unique advantages of using Radius is that each user will have a username and password that they need to use to authenticate with the access point. So simply here they need to include their username and the password, check this box, and connect to Wi-Fi. So this is about connection with Radius. The fourth method that is available on the GWN access points with Captive Portal is the use of a simple password for the Wi-Fi. So let's go ahead and create a Captive Portal policy for that one. So let's just call it password. Then the login method, we're going to use login with password. And here we're going to specify 2 hours again. And the login password, so let's use simple password for now. Save and apply the change. Then we go back here to SSID again. Then we create an SSID for that Captive Portal. So I'm going to select the Enable Captive Portal. Then I'm going to select the Captive Portal that we just created for password authentication. Let me go back here. I need to change that one to open. Device membership. So I'm going to select this access point. Again, if you leave this one, for example, here set to WPA2 and then you include the password, that's like double authentication. So in this case, the users, they need to use the password that we configured under the Captive Portal, and after they authenticate, they need also to include this password. That's why I always select open. So once they provide the correct password, GWN will connect them to Wi-Fi. There are 2 more items that I want to explain here when it comes to Captive Portal. So when you go under guest, it shows you the devices that have connected to your Wi-Fi using the Captive Portal. And then here it shows you the authentication type that have been used. So my computer here is connected to this access point using Facebook authentication. And here it shows that the device is already authenticated. So in case you have devices that you would like to remove them, you just use this icon so you can kick them out. The other thing that I want to talk about is on the splash page. So this is where you have access to all the default folders and files that are used by Captive Portal, and this is where you customize them. So in case you have your own folder, you can upload it using this option, or in case you only have one file that you would like to upload, like an image, you can use the upload option. There's also the download option here that allows you to download all these files right here. So earlier I showed you about the vouchers authentication HTML file that got displayed when we tried to connect using the vouchers. So basically you can download this one, customize it, and then upload it to GWN access point, and then you can select it under the Captive Portal. There are so many things here and so many images, so many files that you can customize. You can select them by images or terms of use. So this is the one that we need to check every time we try to connect with Facebook or vouchers or a Radius server. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Leave us a comment below if you have any requests for any future videos, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up to date with all our videos. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.